Everybody, it's Marty, the JavaScript party, and my buddy Rhett. Here's a almond for Rhett. There you go, Rhett. Oh, and here we go. It's taking forever for this thing to build. It's been building probably for about a minute now, but it gives me a chance. What are we working on? Okay, so we finished. Apparently, I did this finish line. We added the zoom signal, so we need to add a setter. So basically, it's probably going to take a number. Okay, so let's come over here. Let's go to our services. And I did want to kind of go into like a um, I don't know how to put it. Like it's kind of like I'm trying to sort of, gosh, I hate how jaggedy the screen gets sometimes. I'm trying to like sort of lock down in my mind when I basically in the past there was just like a whole bunch of situations, and almost every situation the the answer could be a reasonable answer was to have like a service, a singleton service. And then like I don't know, about 2, 3 months ago, I started kind of favoring in a lot of most cases classes over singletons or over services. So basically, if I most of the time when I need to like sort of add additional code, the answer is to golly, this thing is still building. Um, the answer is to create a service and then put new code in there and inject it and use it. And um, and I could just blindly do that. I never really needed to think beyond that. But like I started running into like issues, like runtime issues around like services inject each other. So I sort of immediately went the full other direction, and that's like if there's no state, if I don't care about sharing state, I'll just create a class. So instead of just create a service for everything, I'll create a class for everything. And then I sort of kind of bounce back and forth between making services when I needed services to share stuff, and then classes when I needed to um, just organize code. Like if the whole idea was just sort of either make some kind of code where it's reusable, but it's just static code, or if I need to, if the code inside of a TypeScript just blew up to get so big, then making a class so that I could just sort of segment out a certain set of code was a good idea. And the so those are sort of, but then like eventually I kind of ran into a problem where I kind of needed both. I needed kind of it. I needed stuff. I just wanted to expand the code, but it did need some state, but only across a limited amount of things. And then I made a really bad architectural decision in my Say Hello program project, and because of that, um, it appears that I ended up kind of being forced to create a scoped service, and then I just fell in love with the idea. So I kind of have like, so now anytime I look at like shared code that I need to share or organize, my first instinct is try to create a class because, just like certain things are just easier to, certain bad outcomes are easier to avoid. You just never end up with them if you create a class, like you don't have to worry about like unattended, as many unattended side effects and stuff like that when you create a class. When you create a singleton, all kinds of weird stuff can happen. Um, but then, so then I'm like, okay, so if I have to make a service, okay, that looks like this, did it finish? Or it looks like it's done compiling, but it hasn't built yet. Raw sizes don't refund. Okay, so now it looks like we are built out. So in my other project, I needed to create like a scoped service, and the reason I needed to create a scoped service is because I wanted to isolate the state. Like that's what it was all about. But what I wanted to reuse that service, but I wanted it to be only isolated to a certain group of components. This time I need a scoped service for a different reason, and that's because I want to sort of add, I guess, what like ChatGPT would call is some friction, or boundaries, right? I want to create a boundary around data that should only exist in here. And that's because like down the road when I'm wrestling and fighting with other implementations that I'm trying to do, I'm going to need to um, I'm at some point going to be looking for like a max screen, full screen view or a zoom view or something like that. And then I'm going to do a search. I'm going to do a control F and I'm going to look for zoom. And then I'm going to be like, oh, okay, here's some zoom functionality. Okay, let me just use this zoom functionality. And then I'm going to realize, oh, this is just for update. And then I have to think hard. Does it make sense to sort of expand it across update, or does it make sense to create something new for this other Zoom concept, right? So it just like is a just a natural roadblock to prevent me from um, using stuff that I shouldn't use. But like when I'm deep into the concept of coding, when I'm deep into coding at the very low levels, um, and I'm not thinking as clear as globally, um, I would that kind of gives me like a little signpost that says, "Yeah, don't go here. That don't use this one. This isn't for you." But if it was just a singleton that was just used across the entire application, it would just work. And then I would be like doing something, zooming something, and then coming into edit and wondering why my edit is all zoomed in, or changing things in edit, like zooming just to look at it and then finding out that I've modified something else that wasn't. So anyway, so that's what that's all about. And this is finally done building, so we can actually start trying to do some productive code. Um, I've always imagined it kind of like if you've ever seen the movie The Matrix, there's like this one scene where like Neo and something, yes, Morpheus are fighting, and like they're fighting, it's going crazy, and then they have to stop, and then they both go into a full rest mode, like getting their everything back together. Um, that's what it always feels like when I'm code, and then you have to wait for it to build. And then code, and you wait for it to build. But so now we want to create a setter, and the whole idea would be something that can publish this, and we'll take a number and we'll in, increment by the number or subtract by the number. So, and then this is so I'm trying to think over here. So when they click this, we're going to want it to go down. When we click this, we're going to want it to go up. Okay, so yeah, I think we just need to, so we need to know if we're going down or up. And I guess negative numbers are fine. So I was thinking, do I need to make two functions, one for incrementing, one for decrementing, or do I need to make one function and make it to where it accepts an argument? And I think I want one function that accepts an argument. Both of them would have to accept an argument too, anyways. But so anyways, so we're gonna say change zoom, and it's going to accept a number. Now, this is where things get so weird because like I work in C sharp as well, and like like the last week, I just was almost completely at work in C sharp, and the way they do type scripting, the way they strongly type things is a little different over there. Okay, so um, zoom. Uh, see, that's. I wonder if I should just change it to the value. I think I should just change it to the value. So I won't have like this thing doesn't have to know how to add things or subtract things. All it knows how to do is change things. And what's really nice about this is like if it does get a command to change the number to the same number, then the publish won't happen. So zoom amount. So basically, I'm going to put it on the think value is a little bit better for this number. And we are doing strong um, we're doing strong typing, so I'm definitely going to return a value. Zoom value. All right, and then what we're going to do is we're going to take this dot zoom level and we are going to set it to the new value. And this, like as a side effect, publishes, which I really wish they would have named that publish instead of set. Or maybe there's a different word that, or maybe even made up a new word that was like for set and publish. Like our language is quite flexible. We could have come up with a whole new word. Because I don't even think this in any way, shape, or form implies that there's any kind of publish happening. And I do know I don't like to do this, and I can never remember how to do. There's like a better, like I've been waiting for sort of like the best practice to come out, and it appears to have come out. Because I really like there's like a way of sort of creating a settable signal that you can set from the service, but like anything outside that's dealing with it can't. And I knew that like the way it was working wasn't going to be a good long-term um, thing. That would, I just realized so that it looked like this was not loading, and I wasn't going to get it, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose all of this stuff. And that was the first time I had thought that. Um, Angular single pip. This is the one I want, I think. All right. So I'm looking for, yeah, see, that's right. So in this reality, I put an underscore under the internal value. And then come on. Yeah, this is the pattern I really like a lot. So basically you name this underscore and you make it a writable, but it's private and read only. And then this is a non-private read only, but it is as read only, so you can't set it. And see, this is a writable signal and this is a regular signal. Um, so I'm just going to copy this. Probably like if I do this, like if I try to do this and try to remember how to do this, um, probably around 10 times it'll stick in my head. So this should be underscore zoom level, and it should be a private and read only, right? That's the top one. Of course, that thing is in the way now. Yeah, private read only underscore. So theoretically, that prevents anything from being able to, anything outside of this service from being able to um, um, modify it. And so this one is not a modifiable value, and it's a number. Is and then this is zoom level. And then I'm going to put whatever is using this can read it just fine. and I am going to put whatever calls it to its job to determine what the next value is and set it, right? So like we could have created, there's so many different ways to do this, but I think that like, for me, as the way I first learned how to code and stuff, um, layers of abstraction can be quite challenging. Um, so for me, it's just going to be so much easier in the layout editor to determine what I what I want than it is for me here to determine what I want. So I think that's the main reason. But it is just one of those things that's just in constant change. So update. And so what we want to do is be able to like hit this zoom button and then it increases this number to 110. And then, or yeah, I think we're going to try bopping by tens to start. Maybe at some point, if we need more precision, maybe we could have that clickable and maybe a little pop-up lets you type in a number, or maybe this turns into an input and you can just type in the number you want. There's probably so many things to do that we could do, but 10 might just be fun. Be able to increment, decrement by 10 might just be fun. Um, we'll just have to see how that goes. The idea is that's a very difficult thing. That's one of the things that a lot of people have a hard time with is the idea of kind of putting that sort of I that sort of decision making, kicking that down the road is hard for a lot of people. All right, so do we have this service in here? That's the first question. So we do not have access to this service inside of our app layout toolbar. So that'll be the first thing to do is just inject the service. And so if we added it as a provided, like if it was one of the providers, then we would get our own context. But since we're just injecting it directly, we'll get the context of the whatever the first, it'll work its way up the tree and whatever the injector tree. And at first it'll check to see if this has a provided one. It'll say, oh no. So then it'll go up to the next level and see if there's a provided one. And so if you go up to the next level, which I believe is here, and you go into the providers, you'll see that we have it. So as it works its way up, this is the one that it'll find. Um, and I find that that whole concept is pretty easy to understand, but like it's also very easy to think you understand it and you don't. But anyway, so we need our inject function. And we know that it's a function because it's lowercase. If it's uppercase, then it could be a class, it could be an interface. There's a lot of things it could be. But since it's lowercase, it's a function. And there is an uppercase one, and that is actually a decorator. So it could be a decorator if it's uppercase as well. But so here we're going to make a local variable called whatever the name of our service is, which I think is app update layout service. And so we'll come back over here. Inject. So I have a, a phone that they gave me at work that I kind of use exclusively for logging in and like Teams and stuff like that, like inter team communications. And because I have that phone, I mean, but I never ever answer it, right? Because I don't, no one ever calls me that I know. That thing I've had it for about 2 weeks now. It's probably missed 300 phone calls. It's just crazy. Now, if my boss or one of them ever started calling it, it's 'cause I don't even have any contacts in it. I haven't added a single contact. If my boss started calling it, I would add him as a contact, and then when it rang, I would check to see if it was him or my boss's boss or one of them. But so we should be able to change this guy here now to mm, I don't know if I'll ever get rid of this signal. I like I like having what it is at this level. It's just like it's just nice. Okay, that's a signal. I know it's a signal. Now it's like one more level. If you go, oh, it doesn't have a signal, but I'm calling it from the service, it's probably a signal. It could be a function though. It could be a function that returns a value. I mean, there's a lot of things. And it is a function that returns a value, but it could be not a signal. It could be a hand coded one or something. There's just no telling. But the fact that it has a signal in makes it a lot easier to understand. Okay, so that works. Oh, I guess I lost my percentage. And then, so just to test it now, because that's one thing I've noticed that a lot of people are pretty successful at coding. They spend a lot of time testing as they go. There are a lot of people that especially if it's like your first round, right? Like a lot of times when you're coding, like the entire coding systems and mentalities and all that just come out of nowhere. And and then everyone just starts coding that way, and everyone who's coding the new way is sort of advantaged over the people who are coding the old way. So like people can get really, really good at coding in a way. And then the thing but that changes like every 3 years. It changes all the time. And and when you do that, the the thing is that when things change like that, you end up with a lot of people. Most people just like okay, the vast majority of people cannot pick up whatever the current coding scheme is, right? There's like a coding scheme. It's very difficult to explain it, and the thing is like everybody's is slightly different. But there's like a successful way of coding. That successful way of coding, I think like 10% of human beings have the experience, capacity, whatever it is that makes it possible. Like that, there's a group that can do that. And and then, but the thing is then of those people, which are a pretty rare group, only like 10% of them can ever adapt to a new way of coding. And if you're on front end, it's going to be like in 3 years. If you're on back end, it's going to be like in 8 years, 9 years, something like that, where you're really going to have to adapt. And what's really bizarre is you would think that people that know the old ways are worth a lot more. But I could tell you, I used to code in this language called Uniface. I get calls for like in 1998, I coded in Uniface for about 6 months. I get calls all the time, like 4 or 5 times a year for Uniface jobs. There are so few people that know how to do Uniface anymore. It doesn't pay. Not only does it not pay, but they treat you like garbage. They're like, and you will do this and you will do that. Whereas like when I get a call for like Angular or something, they're always like, oh, we would love to talk to you and understand what your goals in life are and blah 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 so we can figure it out. Blah blah blah. They're so nice with the new stuff where there's tons and tons of people can do it and it's very learnable at this point and they're really nice. Uniface, there's literally probably you could count everyone capable of doing Uniface, and they treat them like garbage, and they're desperate for them. So it's just one of those. It's best to stay on the latest stuff. It's best to keep up, and you will not. You will always be. I think, in my experience, you're always treated better when you know the new stuff than if you know the old stuff. People prize the new stuff over the old stuff. It's just the nature of the beast. All right. So, anyways, we did give responsibility for determining the current, um, what the next value is here, there. So, and I would rather, so the question is to me, right, that I'm thinking out loud to myself is like, should this be a single function, the zoom in and zoom out, and I pass in the value from here, or should I just say increase and decrease from here? And I think I should just say increase and decrease. Now, do I want to make it like one function and that one function then based on whether a variable is set to true or false or some kind of Boolean or something is then it increases, or do I want two different functions? And to me, the bigger question is, before you can answer that question, the question you have to think to yourself is, okay, so I'm going to have a branch, right? And the branch can either be handled in here or it can be handled um, in here. And which one would be better? And at this point, we just don't have enough information to determine which one's better. And normally at this point where you're only like sort of one level away, if you can't determine, it probably doesn't matter. It's probably the same. Um, so I'm going to have two different separate functions. And honestly, the biggest reason is because it's going to be so much easier to unit test two simple functions without any branches. So functions over branches basically is um, what I'm doing. So increment zoom. And I really like this, right? Because increment zoom is very clear what it's doing. And it doesn't even need a value, and it's just going to return a number. Um, right? And the only reason I'm returning anything, I would probably normally make that void. I would say almost every tutorial you ever see would make that void. Um, but return, and it's going to be app update layout service dot zoom level signal. And again, I think it did save me cognitive work. So this is just going to return that value. Nothing is even listening for that, but whatever. So then I guess I should say let zoom value equals this plus 10. So we're just going to try with 10 to begin with. I don't even know. Like we won't even be able to try even in this whole branch, right? We're going to already commit and everything before we can even see what 10 and minus 10 look like on the visualization. Um, and that's mostly because I want to get all the end-to-end tests squared away. Because this one is probably going to be really useful to have end-to-end testing. Um, and then this dot applet service, and it's set zoom change zoom. And I guess it should be level, change zoom level, and zoom value. And there is no change zoom value. You see, a lot of times, like it's just so much easier to determine what the right naming is. And see, over here is like, okay, I know I'm getting the zoom value, so it's very clear when I'm reading this function in this constant that I'm getting a zoom value because of the name of the argument, but I can't see the name of the argument. so change zoom um, isn't really as yeah. So over here it was like, oh, say change zoom level, and then it was like, nope, it's value, and then it's kind of cool because then I feel better about I got the zoom value, and over here, okay, so now let's go ahead and change this to value. And that is probably one of the more important things that you want to do is try to keep like level and value are kind of the same, but it level sort of implies that there's like what do they call it? Like discrete differences. So like 0 to 10 or whatever, it sort of implies that there's like levels, like stair steps, like big jumps. Whereas signal or value is like, okay, it could be 0.01. It's just a value. I think. I think it's just a little bit easier to read. And I think that most people um, sort of ignore the value of that. Value, value. So we kind of originally started off with like kind of level as our naming screen thing, and then now it's like value. And I think value is a better word. It's kind of funny because like a lot of English words are like okay, so what I've learned on my say hello is that like when someone says, and I never thought about this before, but when someone says hi, they're generally like just like oh hi, like they're just trying to like acknowledge you and you acknowledge them. But if they say hey, they're probably trying to get your attention so they can show you something, right? And it's just like those little subtle things. So we have level, we could say level, but that kind of indicates sort of like a stair step sort of increase. We've got value, which is like more like very small, like it could be anything. It's like it could be any value. And then we have like amount, which is typically more around like money or like something that is like in the physical world. And it's just like there's these subtle differences, at least in my brain, the way these words mean, what these words mean, and like every time I don't have to. Okay, what's this guy's problem? Did I not save it? It says on line 32, I have seen, but I think it's saying on line 28, we're using level of the component. Here we go. But like all of these things just are like little, like there's a saying like the straw that broke the camel's back, and it's just like, well, like early on, did you throw some straws that you didn't really need to, but since you had all this extra capacity, you were using them? I feel like that's what happens a lot. Like every developer is just sort of adding their little level of like, okay, whatever. You know what? I don't need to worry about that little detail. And then as all those details start to sort of pile up, you end up with a real problem. So I feel like at this point it should be able to increment, right? This number here. Nope. Did I not? I don't think I ever actually tied it, tied the function. All right, so now, and it's kind of funny because I will normally go the other way around. Okay, so this is our increment, right? So now we're in a different world, right? And we're saying, okay, we're in our template and we're saying that on the click, we want to create a click handler and then that is equal to, and increment zone. And that is just like how the Angular people set it together. There's nothing set it up. There's nothing like this is a little different than regular JavaScript and stuff like that. But or DOM and like those types of things. But um like here you have a limited amount of information. You're thinking more on what's on the screen. So increment zoom just fits nicely. There's just not a lot to think about on that. So let's do that. Let's see if we, is it still building? I mean, it's weird. Oh, there it is. It's working. So we got that. So now let's do the decrement and then I think we'll be done. And this should be a lot easier. This is kind of a really neat task for like this is when you can really think about the architecture. Like theoretically, I should just be able to copy and paste that code, change this to DEC, and then make this a -10, and everything else should say. So at this point, it might even be, ooh, I misspelled. It might actually be, it probably will in the long run be better off to say modify or change zoom. And that takes a number. New value. And then that's a number. And it's going to return a number. And I don't even know like if this is a smart thing to do with this, but I think we can just say and the reason I'm doing it this way, so I did the decrement up there. What I'm thinking, I don't know if it's the right road, but um, but like I want ease of um, like I'm trying. Okay, so this is a little bit convoluted. Like if you're just looking in this file, this is very, very convoluted, but I think it makes the um, code in the template a lot less convoluted, like enough less convoluted that it makes it um, easier to um, like so like if I'm ever just making changes in the template, I don't really need to think much about what's going on in this because it's very clear when you're in the template, but you don't really understand what's going on. Like, and you don't need to from the template. You don't really need to understand this stuff. All you need to understand is that you want to increment or decrement it. That's all it needs to know, right? It doesn't need to know this stuff. Um, but like down the line, in all likelihood, there's going to be something I want to do in addition whenever they're incrementing or decrementing. So I can handle that in these increment or decrement functions. And then there might be something that I want to do if they're doing either, and then I can add that here. So I've like sort of left myself with a bunch of breathing room. And so I can't remember. I don't think we updated this. And that's just sort of my mental justification for why I'm doing that is basically to in hopes of making like saving myself some time in the future. Um, there's just no telling if that time will ever come. And to be honest with you, if they wanted to combine it, it's so much easier at this point, right? Than to um, if they're like, no, I want one, I don't want all these extra functions inside of this TypeScript, and like you don't ever know what's going on. Like as a developer, So like it could be that some measure somewhere is like the number of functions that you're creating, and they may say, oh, creating a function. Someone down the line might be like, oh, you guys created 200 new functions last month. We need to slow down the functions. So what are we going to do? We're going to get yelled at for making functions, and they're going to give us some weird reason why we can't make functions because they don't really understand what the problem is. They just know that you're not supposed to make so many functions. It's sort of the nature of all of this stuff. All right, so it doesn't matter that we don't have an image. Okay, so that's working. So now it goes 90, 80. Sometimes people really don't like when things move. Like, so when we click this whole thing slid. That used to be a real problem. It doesn't seem to bother everybody anymore. I remember when this was like there's certain things that like you're just guaranteed um, that someone's going to notice. And this is one of those things where they used to be a really strong guarantee, but not anymore. But so it looks like we're done with this Zoom work. So let's go ahead and just look at all of our code because I kind of want to commit this since it does work. Um, but I don't want to. No, I think I want to leave it as. I think the value. So sometimes committing things is really nice because, like, it works and it kind of gives you a fallback point. But then sometimes being able to see the changes is going to be helpful. And I think in this case, being able to see the changes is going to be helpful because like tomorrow, what we're going to work on is getting this, and this will toggle on. It'll only be displayed if we're in regular view or full screen view. And I feel like I wanted to change that to something else. Configured view, not regular view. So let's go ahead and change that because this is like one of those things where it's going to be like this name is going to carry over into the service. So tomorrow, when we do this, we'll start off looking in here, and we're gonna be like, okay, I need to copy. This is my thing, so I'll copy paste these two lines probably, and instead of zoom value, I'll be like uh, maximized, minimized, or something like that. And our um, let's see, update layout mode is probably what I'll call it, something along those lines, and it'll have two possible values, and one will be um, configured, and the other will be full, configured and full. Now, the other thing that we have to think about is that, like, is this going to work? Is this going to be fine? Or are we going to end up with like 1,000 of these things, 500 different little toggles and things like that? And the reality is that if that is the case, if we have one big mega object that we're doing, then there's other issues. But I don't think we're going to get too many of these, right? Because like, yeah, I don't know. I don't think there's going to be that many of these sorts of changes. There's going to be probably a maximum of like 15. If we have 15, maybe it'll be better to not have it to have it as an object. But the thing is once if it becomes an object, then maintaining like with these primitives, it's very, very obvious that the system has no problem noticing when things change. But once it becomes an object, things get a lot more complicated. So we probably want to hold out in this view. See, this is the visualization. See, we're already starting, but see, like these are user controlled, right? And then these are like um, defined by like how by the browser, like how big the browser is. But at this point, it's so much easier to say, okay, yeah. user defined update config. So that's what we have down here. Up here, we have like the ID, which is the actual ID that the user selects. So it's not a configuration. And then we have this edit visual. And so this is the browser driven configs. And again, we didn't really need this comment um, when there was only one kind of config. But now we have two kind of configs. We got the configs that are driven by whatever the condition of the browser is, so how wide, tall, things like that. And then we have, and then this is what's in the URL in the browser. And then this is like what the user selected. So anyways, yeah, see zoom value signal, like before when I was always doing singletons, I would probably end up name this update zoom value signal instead of, so that I would be able to see in my code that it was for update, not for that. But see now, since it's isolated to this, and I'm thinking out loud, right? I'm not telling you how things are. I'm trying to come up with the words to describe what I think is happening right now. And if you think something different, I would love to hear that. But I think what's happening here is like, since I've isolated this service, since I've made this a scoped service, it's only scoped to update, I can name things a little less. I don't have to be nearly as I can name things a little bit less because it's part of this app update layout service, and you can't get to it outside of update without like providing it. But even if you did decide to provide it, you're not going to get this same one unless you get rid of this provider here. So like if you were like, oh, okay, I'm going to put this provider up at the app level, then it would be available to everybody. But if you go create some new components and all that, and you provide this to the new components, then their memory won't interact with each other. So that makes it like a lot less risky. So if I'm doing that, I'm doing that because I want update stuff. I don't know why, but and it wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me if I want to do like a pop out that in some other view, like if I'm on the data view or something, I could say, oh, you know what, I want to do an update, and then I can create my own little like pop out with a new some sort of layout, some sort of updater, and that updater could have those same things, but it may not be exactly the same. It might be slightly different or something, but it might still want the same data structures. Anyway, so I think that's enough for today. Happy coding, everybody. Have a wonderful day. Bye.